homeless boy fixed a billionaire's car, but when she saw the necklace on his neck, she froze. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled. Because that necklace belonged to her family. Rain lashed the city like whips of glass, blurring neon into streaks of color. In the backseat of a sleek black Maybach, Clara Davenport tapped her diamond watch impatiently. Billionaire, heiress, tycoon. The world whispered her name with reverence and fear, but tonight, she was just another stranded traveler, frowning at the lifeless dashboard. Unbelievable, she muttered. A $200,000 car, and it dies in the middle of nowhere. Her driver was off duty, her security team dispatched elsewhere. She popped the hood herself, steam hissing up into the rain like a laugh at her expense. For once, her wealth bought her nothing but inconvenience. Then he appeared. A boy. Lean, rain-drenched, shoes worn to paper, clutching a frayed backpack like it was treasure. His eyes were sharp, though, too sharp for a beggar. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady despite the cold. "Your serpentine belt's loose. Alternator's about to give up." Clara blinked at him. "Excuse me. I can fix it, if you've got anything. Pin, clip, string." He held his hands up, careful, like someone used to being mistaken for a thief. Clara's instinct screamed no, but something in his voice, calm, certain, made her hesitate. She pulled a silver clip from her planner. "Try. If you make it worse, I'll call the police." The boy half smiled. "If I make it worse, you won't need to." He bent over the engine with surprising grace, humming faintly. His hands worked fast, practiced, like he'd done this 100 times. Clara watched him, watched the way his backpack sagged open, revealing a battered notebook stuffed with equations scrawled in pencil. Not a thief's tool, but a student's weapon. The engine roared back to life. Clara blinked at the sudden purr. "How? Did you know how to do that?" she asked. The boy shrugged, wiping his hands on his soaked shirt. "Picked things up. People throw away cars like they throw away people. Both still got use, if you know where to look." The line lingered in the air, heavier than the rain. Clara studied him more closely now. His face, young but carved by hardship. His eyes, bright but shadowed. And then, she saw it. The necklace. A thin silver chain holding a locket dulled by years of wear. The sight punched her chest. That design, unique, handcrafted. She had given it to her sister on her 21st birthday, just before her sister disappeared forever with her infant son. Her voice broke. Where did you get that necklace?" The boy's hand shot to his chest, clutching it protectively. His voice, usually steady, cracked. It was my mum's. She said it came from family." Lightning flared. Clara's diamond earrings glinted. For the first time in years, her wealth felt meaningless. Because in front of her, soaked and shivering, stood a boy wearing the one piece of her past she had never stopped grieving. And somewhere deep inside, she already knew. This was no ordinary boy. The rain had stopped, but Clara's mind hadn't. Hours after the boy had vanished into the night, the image of that necklace haunted her. She sat in her study, walls lined with books she rarely read, screens glowing with stock prices and international reports. None of it mattered tonight. She poured herself a glass of wine, staring at the fire. The locket burned in her thoughts, her sister's locket. The last time she had seen it was years ago, on a night filled with shouting, slammed doors, and a young woman walking out with her baby cradled against her chest. "You chose money over family, Clara," her sister's voice whispered in memory. "One day you'll regret it." Clara shook the thought away. Regret was a luxury she had never afforded herself. But that boy, Ethan, he wore regret around his neck like a brand. "Find him," she ordered the next morning, her tone crisp as she addressed her head of security. Discreetly, no police, no press, I want everything: name, history, family, what he eats, where he sleeps. The man nodded, but Clara's eyes lingered on her daughter, Amelia, who had just drifted into the room in her school uniform. 16, bright-eyed, a spark of rebellion simmering behind her smile. "You're late," Clara said. Amelia rolled her eyes. "It's just school, Mother, not a board meeting." Clara almost snapped, but something about Amelia's tone, evasive. Later that week, Clara noticed it again. Amelia sneaking glances at her phone, slipping out after dinner with excuses thinner than mist. One night, Clara followed her. Her heels clicked softly as she trailed her daughter through side streets, away from the glittering avenues of the rich into the forgotten edges of the city, where lamplight died and garbage lined the gutters. Amelia stopped at a broken fence, ducking through into a clearing of trash heaps and rusted metal. There, sitting on an overturned crate with a book balanced on his knees, was Ethan. Clara froze in the shadows. Her daughter, the heiress of one of the city's largest fortunes, ran straight to him, her face glowing. "You came?" Amelia grinned, dropping beside him. "Of course," Ethan replied softly. "We didn't finish quadratic equations yesterday." Amelia opened her notebook eagerly. "You make it sound so easy. My teachers don't explain it like this. It's like you know what it feels like to struggle." Ethan chuckled, though there was no humor in it. "Struggle teaches better than any classroom." Clara's throat tightened. Her daughter, sitting in filth beside a homeless boy, speaking to him as if he were a prophet. And worse, she wasn't wrong. There was something magnetic about Ethan, something that threatened Clara's carefully ordered world. Amelia suddenly looked up, her voice softer. "You're better than my teachers, better than anyone." The words hung in the cold night air, and Clara's chest burned with a storm she couldn't yet name. Fear, guilt, admiration, and something else. Destiny, maybe. She stepped back into the shadows, unseen, her mind racing. Ethan wasn't just a boy with her sister's necklace. He was a boy reshaping her daughter's heart, one lesson at a time. And Clara knew. She could not ignore him any longer. Morning sunlight streamed across Clara's marble breakfast table, glinting off polished silver and crystal. But she barely touched her coffee. Her phone buzzed with a message from her security chief. "Details on the boy. You'll want to read this in private." Clara excused herself, stepping into her study. She opened the file. Each page felt heavier than the last. Ethan Harper, 15, homeless, mother deceased, no father listed, multiple shelters, no stable address. But then a thread caught her eye. Records from years ago. Enrollment in a private academy under the sponsorship of Richard Kensington, a billionaire philanthropist. Clara's pulse quickened. Kensington. She had known him. A titan, generous, beloved, until his private jet went down in flames 5 years ago. Her phone buzzed again. "We spoke to an old caretaker from the Kensington estate. He remembers the boy." Later that day, Clara sat across from the man, his wrinkled hands shaking around a cup of tea. His eyes softened when she mentioned Ethan. He was just a little thing when Mr. Kensington found them, the caretaker recalled. His mother had nothing, living on the streets. But one night she saved Mr. Kensington himself, pulled him from an accident outside a diner. He said he owed her his life. So he brought them in, put the boy in school, promised her a business, a future. The man's voice darkened. But when Mr. Kensington died in that crash, the family changed. They called the mother bad luck, said she'd cursed him. I'll never forget the night they dragged her and the boy out of the mansion in the rain. A flashback seared Clara's mind. Ethan, much younger, clinging to his mother's hand as guards shoved them through iron gates, rain slashing down. His mother coughed, shielding him with her thin coat. His eyes burned with helpless fury. Clara's chest tightened. What happened to her? The caretaker's gaze dropped. She never recovered. The cold, the sickness. She fought, but the streets don't forgive. She died 2 winters ago. The boy, he buried her himself. The words punched Clara harder than any boardroom betrayal ever had. Her throat ached. A boy who should have grown up in privilege, in love, instead lost everything, twice. That night, Clara sat alone by her fireplace, Ethan's face flickering in the flames. She saw the way Amelia looked at him, not with pity but admiration. She remembered the way he spoke of struggle, the way he refused to ask for anything, even when he had nothing. Her sister's locket, Kensington's kindness, the betrayal of a powerful family, a mother's death. The pieces were aligning into something bigger than chance. She whispered to herself, almost a vow, "You're not just some boy off the street. You're family. And if the world tried to bury you, I'll see you rise." The fire popped, sparks leaping upward like tiny rebellions. In their glow, Clara saw foreshadowing. This boy wasn't finished. He was only just beginning. The night was cool, the city humming low in the distance. Clara stood at the edge of the abandoned lot where she'd first seen Ethan teach Amelia. He was there again, hunched over his notebook by the dim glow of a street lamp. His concentration was fierce, his pencil darting across paper like a weapon against the darkness. Clara stepped forward. Her heels crunched gravel. Ethan looked up, wary, ready to pack his things and vanish. "You don't have to run," Clara said, softer than she intended. "I just want to talk." He studied her, suspicion narrowing his eyes. "Talk? People like you don't talk to people like me. They offer coins or call the police." Clara flinched, but she didn't back down. "You're wrong. This isn't about pity, Ethan. It's about truth." She reached into her bag and pulled out a velvet box. Slowly, she opened it, revealing a gleaming necklace, identical to the one around his neck, untouched by time. Ethan's breath caught. "This was my sister's," Clara whispered. "Your mother's sister, which makes you my nephew." The word hung in the air like thunder. Ethan staggered back. His hand clutched his locket tightly, knuckles white. "No," he snapped. "Don't play games with me. You don't know my mom. You don't know anything about us." Clara's voice cracked. "I know more than you think. I know she died alone, sick, because the world turned its back. I know you've survived things no boy should. And I know because that necklace doesn't lie, that you are blood of my blood." Ethan's eyes shimmered, but he shook his head violently. Memories tore through him. His mother coughing in the cold, her hand squeezing his as she whispered, "Stay strong, Ethan. You come from love. Remember that." She never mentioned you," he said bitterly. Clara's heart twisted. "Because I failed her. We fought, and I let pride build walls. She left with you, and I thought I had time to fix it. But I didn't." Ethan turned away, voice low. "And now you show up after everything because you saw a necklace?" "No," Clara said firmly. "Because I saw you. The way you taught my daughter. The way you fixed that car like it was second nature. The way you fight to exist when the world tries to erase you. That's not a coincidence, Ethan. That's bloodline. That's destiny." Silence. Only the city breathing in the distance. Finally, Ethan whispered, almost to himself, "Destiny doesn't sleep in trash heaps." Clara stepped closer, her voice trembling but resolute. "Then let me pull you out of them. Let me give you what your mother wanted for you. Family. A chance. A future." Ethan looked at her, eyes burning with a mixture of longing and rage. For a moment he seemed ready to believe. But then he snapped his notebook shut, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. "Family's just another word people use before they leave," he muttered, and walked into the night. Clara stood frozen, pain etched on her face. But deep inside she knew this was not the end. This was the beginning of the fight to bring him home. The Davenport estate was a palace of glass and steel, sprawling gardens and marble floors polished enough to see your face. For Ethan, Stepping inside felt like stepping onto another planet. The chandeliers hummed with quiet electricity. The smell of cinnamon drifted from the kitchen, and the silence was almost violent compared to the noise of the streets. Amelia tugged his sleeve, grinning. "You'll get used to it. Took me years not to get lost in the East Wing." Ethan kept his eyes low. His sneakers left faint marks on the marble. He felt every servant's stare, every polished reflection screaming, "You don't belong here." Clara watched him closely. She had convinced him, after nights of persuasion, to stay temporarily. "For your mother's sake, for Amelia's sake," she had said. But she knew temporary wasn't enough. She needed him safe, educated, protected. Which is why, days later, Ethan found himself standing outside Hillsworth Academy, the city's most prestigious private school. Glass towers, manicured lawns, and gates taller than some apartment buildings. He clutched his notebook like a shield. Inside the principal's office, Clara's voice was cool, commanding. "He'll be enrolled in Amelia's grade immediately. Full access to every program. Treat him as you would any student. Better, in fact." The principal hesitated, glancing at Ethan's worn clothes, his wary eyes. Clara's gaze hardened and the hesitation vanished. "Of course, Mrs. Davenport." The first day was war. Whispers followed Ethan down the halls. "Isn't that the street rat?" Clara Davenport's charity case. Some laughed outright when he pulled out his battered pencil case. At lunch, a group of rich boys blocked his path. The leader, Daniel Kensington, grandson of the same family that once threw Ethan and his mother out, smirked. "Well, look who crawled back from the gutter. My grandfather was right. You Harpers bring nothing but bad luck." Ethan froze, rage boiling in his veins. His fists clenched, but he remembered his mother's voice. "Violence makes you theirs. Brilliance makes you free." He said nothing, just brushed past, but that silence cut deeper than any insult. Later that evening, in the estate's library, Amelia found him hunched over a desk, equations spilling across pages. "Why don't you fight back?" she asked softly. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Because I'm not here to fight them. I'm here to beat them, in their own game." Clara stood in the doorway, unseen, pride swelling in her chest. But fear, too. She knew the path ahead would not just be about education. It would be about survival. As she watched Ethan scribble formulas by lamplight, she saw foreshadowing in every number, every equation. This boy was a storm in waiting. And storms, once they arrive, do not ask for permission. The world had buried him once. Now, he was rising. And those who had laughed would one day choke on their laughter. The weeks at Hillsworth blurred into a battlefield of whispers and sideways glances. Ethan had grown used to the sneers, the mocking laughter when his old notebook spilled across his desk, the murmurs of charity case that echoed behind him. But beneath the cruelty, he could feel something sharper brewing, resentment with teeth. It came to a head during midterm exams. Ethan had scored the highest in mathematics, shattering school records. For one brief moment, he stood taller than every heir and heiress in that gleaming academy. And that's when the trap was set. One morning, as he walked into class, teachers closed in on him, stern faces and clipped voices. On his desk lay a thumb drive, confiscated, marked with evidence. The principal's voice rang like a verdict. "Ethan Harper, you are accused of cheating. These files match exam papers leaked from the staff server. Until further notice, you are suspended." Gasps filled the room. Daniel Kensington leaned back with a smug smile, whispering just loud enough. "Told you. Street rats can't help but steal." Ethan's chest burned. "I didn't..." But the words drowned in a tide of accusations. His classmates jeered. Teachers shook their heads. And for a second he was back in the rain years ago. Guards dragging his mother through Kensington gates, her voice breaking. "We didn't do anything wrong. Please, my son." The memory twisted like a knife. By evening, Ethan was packing his bag in the Davenport estate, fury and despair tangled in his eyes. Amelia burst into the room. "You're not leaving," she cried. "You didn't cheat. I know you didn't." "They've already decided," Ethan muttered, shoving notebooks into his backpack. "Rich boys write the rules, and people like me, we're always guilty." Clara stepped into the doorway, her presence sharp as steel. "Put the bag down." Ethan's voice cracked. "You don't understand." "I understand more than you think." Clara crossed the room, her tone unyielding. "You are not leaving this house, and you are not leaving that school. Do you hear me?" His fists trembled. "Why fight when the game is rigged?" "Because that's exactly what they want," Clara snapped. "You don't run, you rise. Do you think your mother endured everything she did so you could quit now?" Ethan froze, her words hitting a hidden nerve. His mother's voice echoed, "Stay strong, Ethan. Remember, you come from love." Amelia stepped closer, gripping his arm. "We'll fight this, together." For the first time since the accusations, Ethan's eyes softened. He let the backpack slip from his shoulder. Days later, Clara's lawyers tore the accusations apart, proving the files were planted, the digital fingerprints pointing straight to Daniel Kensington. The suspension was reversed, the record cleared, but the damage had been done. Ethan knew now his enemies weren't just mocking him, they wanted him destroyed. And as he stared across the assembly hall at Daniel, who avoided his gaze with a smirk fading to unease, Ethan thought coldly, "You tried to bury me, but all you did was plant me deeper." The accusation might have been cleared, but the scars remained. Students still whispered, their eyes sharp with envy. Teachers, embarrassed by their own gullibility, kept their distance. Yet Ethan walked the halls of Hillsworth taller than before, his silence now a weapon. The turning point came weeks later, in the grand auditorium. The principal stood on stage announcing the finalists for the International Science and Mathematics Olympiad. Names were read, heirs of pharmaceutical dynasties, tech prodigies with private tutors, and then Ethan Harper. The hall fell into stunned silence. Daniel Kensington's smirk curdled, whispers rippled like wildfire. "That's impossible. After what he did, he's not one of us." Ethan rose slowly, his battered notebook under his arm, and walked to the stage. Every step was defiance. Every breath said, "I belong here." Later that evening, Amelia found him in the library, pacing between towers of books. "Are you nervous?" she asked. He laughed without humor. "Nervous is for people who can afford to fail. For me, this is survival." Amelia touched his arm gently. "No, for you, this is destiny." The competition was grueling. Weeks of preparation, endless equations, problem-solving marathons that drained even the brightest minds. Ethan attacked each challenge with quiet ferocity, memories fueling him. Nights on the street, studying under flickering lamplight, his mother's voice whispering encouragement as she shivered in the cold. Clara's vow by the fireplace, "If the world tried to bury you, I'll see you rise." On the day of the finals, the stadium in Geneva glittered with flags from across the world. Cameras rolled, judges watched. Daniel Kensington, humiliated to have been eliminated earlier, sat in the audience, arms crossed, waiting for Ethan to fail. The challenge was announced, an unsolvable equation, a puzzle designed to break even the most gifted minds. Ethan stared at the board, and for a moment, time blurred. He was a child again, sitting beside his mother in a freezing alley, her voice hoarse as she pointed to equations in his notebook. "The world will try to make you small, Ethan. Numbers don't lie. Solve them, and you'll always rise above." His pencil moved, fast, fluid. The judges leaned in, spectators murmured. Minutes stretched, but Ethan's hand never faltered. And then he dropped the pencil. "Done." Gasps. Silence. The judges checked, rechecked, whispered among themselves. Finally, the head judge stood. "Correct. Flawless. Revolutionary." The hall erupted. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. Ethan Harper, homeless boy turned genius, had just beaten the world's best. Clara and Amelia stood in the front row, tears in their eyes. Daniel Kensington sank lower in his seat, his face pale with shame. As Ethan lifted the trophy, the cameras caught the necklace glinting at his chest. A symbol, a declaration. He whispered under his breath, almost like a vow. "This is for you, Mum, and for everyone who said I'd never matter." The world cheered. But inside, Ethan was already thinking of the next battle. Because victory was sweet, but revenge would be sweeter. The news spread like wildfire. Homeless boy wins global Olympiad. His photo, storm gray eyes, necklace glinting, trophy raised, was plastered across magazines, blogs, TV screens. Overnight, Ethan Harper became a name the world knew. At the Davenport estate, calls flooded Clara's office. Investors, universities, heads of state, everyone wanted a piece of the boy who had risen from the streets. But amidst the praise came a familiar shadow. The Kensingtons. They requested a private meeting, smiling masks hiding their old cruelty. Clara wanted to refuse, but Ethan surprised her. "No," he said calmly. "I'll face them." The Kensington estate was as grand as Ethan remembered, its gates iron jaws that had once spat him and his mother out into the rain. As he walked through, memories clawed at him, his mother coughing, clutching his hand, begging for mercy. He forced them down. In the gilded drawing room, Daniel's grandfather leaned on a cane, his voice smooth. "Ethan, we may have been mistaken. You've proven yourself extraordinary. We would like to support you, bring you back into the family name." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Family?" His voice cut sharp. "When my mother begged for your help, you called her a curse. You left her to die in the cold." The old man flinched, but Ethan pressed on, louder now. "You threw us out like trash, but look at me now. I'm not your shame. I'm your proof. Proof that what you threw away became greater than anything you tried to protect." The room went silent. Cameras clicked. The press Clara had deliberately invited stood in the back, capturing every word. The Kensingtons' faces drained of color. Ethan turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. "You wanted me forgotten. Instead, I'll be remembered. And you," his eyes locked on Daniel, seething, "you'll spend the rest of your life explaining how the boy you mocked became the man the world celebrates." Days later, the fallout was everywhere. Headlines screamed, "Kensington hypocrisy exposed." Their empire's stocks wavered, their names stained. For once, it was their turn to be shamed. At Hillsworth Academy, the tide shifted too. The same students who sneered now lined up to shake Ethan's hand. The board paraded him as their pride. But Ethan never forgot. One afternoon, Daniel cornered him in the courtyard, fury in his eyes. "You'll pay for humiliating my family," Daniel spat. Ethan's gaze was cold, steady. "I already have, with success." He leaned closer. "And here's the part you'll never escape. I didn't destroy you with lies or fists. I destroyed you by being everything you said I couldn't." Daniel faltered, the weight of truth heavier than any blow. That night, Ethan sat by his window at the Davenport estate, necklace in hand. He whispered to the stars, "Mom, I kept your promise. I stayed strong. I rose above." But his eyes hardened. The victory wasn't just for his mother. It was for every child cast aside, for every wound the rich inflicted. This was only the beginning. The boy from the streets had become the storm. And storms don't just pass. They change everything. The storm of Ethan's victory didn't fade. It grew. Universities sent scholarships, tech giants sent offers, politicians sent invitations. Yet instead of grabbing at riches, Ethan surprised them all. At a press conference, standing behind the microphone with Clara and Amelia at his side, he made his announcement. "I will not be bought," Ethan said, his voice firm. Cameras clicked like lightning. "I will not be another trophy for the powerful. My fight is not for boardrooms. It's for the streets I came from. For the children still shivering in the cold like I once did. I'm building an institute Free schools, technology centers, and housing for those abandoned. Funded by the grants you're offering me. If you truly admire what I've achieved, invest in them, not me. The hall erupted. Some applauded, some scoffed, but the seed was planted. Within months, the Harper Foundation rose. Old warehouses became classrooms. Abandoned factories became tech hubs where children of the forgotten learned to code, build, and dream. Ethan was there every day, teaching, guiding, listening. The boy who once studied by trash fires now lit the way for others. But success brought confrontation. Wealthy parents at Hillsworth raged. They called Clara. "This is unacceptable," one sneered in her office. "Our children can't sit beside a charity case who mocks our way of life. He's turning students against us." Clara's eyes were ice. "Ethan isn't mocking your way of life, he's exposing it." At school, Daniel and his circle tried again to humiliate Ethan. They vandalized his locker, planted fake rumors, even bribed teachers to mark him down. Yet every attempt failed. Clara's influence protected him, Amelia's loyalty shielded him, and Ethan's brilliance silenced lies with truth. Still, Ethan never forgot the betrayal. One evening, after a lecture, Amelia found him sketching plans across his notebook, blueprints for an innovation lab that would rival the academies of the elite. "You're not just teaching," she whispered. "You're building an empire." Ethan looked up, eyes hard but alive. "Not an empire for me. For them. For every kid who's been told they don't belong." His voice lowered. "And every time the rich see one of those kids succeed, it'll remind them of what they tried to bury." Flashbacks flickered in his mind. His mother coughing in the cold, Kensington Gate slamming shut, students laughing at his worn shoes. Rage hardened into purpose. Months later, at Hillsworth's annual gala, Ethan unveiled the first Harper Innovation Center. Students from the poorest neighborhoods demonstrated inventions, projects, and theories that stunned even the wealthiest donors. The elites who once mocked him had no choice but to fund him. Because now supporting Ethan wasn't charity. It was survival for their reputations. Standing on stage, Ethan looked out at the sea of tuxedos and glittering jewels. Many of those same faces had sneered at him, doubted him, tried to crush him. Now they clapped. They clapped because they had to. And Ethan smiled, not with joy but with revenge sweet as iron. "They will fund the future," he whispered to Amelia afterward. "And the future will belong to those they abandoned." The auditorium in Geneva shimmered with crystal chandeliers and 1,000 lights, cameras flashing like stars. The Global Humanity Awards, the highest honor given to innovators who had changed the world. Tonight, all eyes were on one name. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice thundered, "please welcome the recipient of this year's Global Visionary Award, Ethan Harper." The hall erupted. Leaders rose to their feet. Children from his foundation waved small banners with his name. And there he was, once a boy fixing cars in the rain, now a young man in a tailored suit, still wearing the battered silver necklace at his chest. Clara and Amelia watched from the front row, tears bright in their eyes. As Ethan stepped onto the stage, applause shook the hall. Yet his eyes locked not on the crowd, but on a small cluster of faces in the back. The Kensington family, stiff and pale, forced by reputation to attend. Their empire had crumbled under scandal. Their wealth was fading, but their shame, eternal. Ethan gripped the microphone. Silence fell. "When I was 15, he began, I was called a thief, a curse, trash. I was thrown onto the streets with my mother to die. She didn't make it, but I did. And tonight I accept this award, not for myself, but for her, and for every child the world tries to discard." Gasps echoed. He opened his locket, showing the faded picture of his mother and Clara's younger self. His voice cracked but grew stronger. "My mother told me, struggle teaches better than any classroom. She was right. I stand here because struggle became my teacher, and pain became my fuel. Flashbacks flickered in his mind. Fixing Clara's car in the rain, Amelia smiling as he taught her math, guards dragging his mother from Kensington gates the moment he solved the unsolvable equation. Every wound had led here. He looked straight at the Kensingtons. To those who betrayed us, thank you, because every time you tried to bury me, you planted me deeper. And from the dirt, I grew roots too strong to cut. The hall was dead silent. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. Then applause exploded, louder than thunder, longer than storm. Children from his foundation rushed the stage, hugging him, waving their projects in the air. Reporters shoved forward, desperate for his words. Ethan lifted the trophy, his necklace glinting against the lights. His voice rang like a vow. This is the revenge you never expected, not your destruction, my rise. And no matter how high I climb, I'll never stop pulling others up with me. That is my legacy. The crowd rose as one, clapping, cheering, chanting his name. In the back, the Kensingtons sat frozen, their shame complete. No wealth, no title could erase the truth. The boy they once cursed now stood as a legend. Clara clasped Amelia's hand. Together they watched Ethan. No longer just a boy, no longer just family, but a force. The boy who had once fixed a billionaire's car had fixed something greater. He had fixed destiny.